Talking baseball, baseball and the O's.
Welcome back, Birdland, to another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Benny Becker. Thrilled to be back with you folks today. Fantastic episode on our hands coming your way. We want to catch you up on the first game of the Pittsburgh series, and it was a great one to talk about. We're going to touch on how Grayson Rodriguez is finally elite. We know it's been coming. We've seen the signs. I'm here to say it is official. That man is elite, and we will touch on that. I have to continue talking as well about the boys in Norfolk. It has been a fantastic start to the season, to say the least, for them. And I wasn't planning on having a minor league topic every episode. But when they play like this, I have to talk about it because they are kicking down the door, pounding down the door to the major leagues. And then we also want to talk about how excited I am for Tyler Wells' start today. Touch on that a little bit. Talk about Jackson Holliday and maybe the chip on his shoulder that he's playing with right now. The Orioles made a very, very, very minor trade that we're going to let you folks know about. Certainly nothing to write home about. But I want to keep you up to date on everything we got going on. And that's also going to potentially lead me to one of my favorite topics to talk about, the path for the Orioles to get Mike Trout, and how, to me, it's certainly forming. And to me, there are real opportunities for the Orioles to make a little bit down the path. And I'm going to hopefully get to that today. I believe we can run through everything enough that I can talk about that. We have enough time to dig into it the way I want to. So let's just start with yesterday's game, Friday's game. Game 1 in Pittsburgh. The Orioles came out victorious, 5-2 victory, and it was a beautiful thing to see. Now, when we were in Baltimore for the first two series, we were dealing with a lot of cold and wind. That's certainly something that stayed in Pittsburgh yesterday at the very least, if not moving forward for the rest of this series. I didn't dig into the weather, so I don't know personally. But yesterday, the weather was in full force, and we were used to rainy conditions, especially during that Royals series. Yesterday, we had to deal with not only snow, but hail. A hailstorm out of nowhere hit the game. It was absolute pandemonium. It was absolute craziness, and it pretty much came out of nowhere, because when they started the game, it looked like it was a pretty nice day. Again, cold and windy. And I didn't look at the weather reports moving forward, so I don't know if they were anticipating this. But literally in a blink of an eye, these guys were playing in a snow and hailstorm. It was certainly something to see. In fact, when Grayson Rodriguez talked about it later, he said at one point it was hard for him to even see the home plate when he was standing on that mound, because they didn't stop the game at all, gang. Like, despite, I think they knew that they were going to catch some throughout the entire day. But it's kind of crazy that they didn't stop the game for how extreme that weather was. Just from a watching standpoint, I can't imagine being on the field playing a Major League Baseball game in those conditions. And luckily, it didn't seem to hinder the Orioles at all. So in that Royals series, the offense really started out slow. We saw in the Angels series to start the season, especially the first two games, the offense came out hot, and we were putting up runs early. Well, unfortunately, that kind of went away in the Royals series. Lucky that we still pulled out 2 of 3, as we were able to score later in the games. But it's great to be able to give your starting pitcher a bit of a cushion, a bit of a lead to work with early in on the game. Okay, so yesterday, again, the offense started out hot. Maybe not as hot as the first two games, where they ended up putting up, I think, 13 and 11 runs. 24 runs between the two games. Certainly it wasn't that kind of offensive madhouse, but the Orioles did all they needed to do. Started out with Ryan O'Hearn in the second inning, got himself a home run, followed by Gunnar in the third inning, also hit a home run. Both were solo shots. In fact, a funny thing about this game is there were 5 total home runs, all of which were solo home runs, okay? 7 runs between the two teams, 5-2 victory for the Orioles. Pirates got on the board with an O'Neal Cruz home run in the 5th inning, making it 2-1. And if you watched yesterday's episode, you know I was predicting O'Neal Cruz to get a home run. In fact, the gambler in me wants to talk about how I had money on him yesterday. He hit a home run. Unfortunately, in the parlays that I had him in, nobody else hit a home run. So it didn't pay nothing, which stinks. It happens. But not to get off track, we're up decently big to start the season. We had a big, I believe it was Wednesday, on the gambling books, maybe Thursday, whichever it was. We had a big day that day as far as the home runs go, right? And if you want, you can reach out. I can dig more into that for you folks if you're unsure really the market I'm talking about as far as gambling goes. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to get too deep. But I was right that O'Neal Cruz would hit at least a home run against us. I just had that feeling. He's the type of guy that I feel like always will do damage to the Orioles. Certain players like not to put him in this necessarily spectrum too early in his career, but like the Mike Trouts of the world and the O'Neal Cruz, and I feel like the Ellie De La Cruz and those type of Bobby Witts always will seem to hurt the Orioles like they will many teams. That's why they're superstars or on their way to becoming superstars. But nailed that one, O'Neal Cruz to get a home run. And luckily, listen, I'm rooting for the Orioles first and foremost in every which way. Even if I have money on a guy they're playing to perform well, ultimately I want the Orioles to win. So that comes first and foremost, always for me. And it's nice being right on both accounts because I really felt that they were going to come out strong and be able to put up some runs on the Pirates rookie Jones, who looked outstanding, I have to say. I mean, the kid's got special stuff for sure. Not only can he absolutely hum, but he's got some nice breaking balls, nice off-speed stuff. He's certainly, him and Grayson Rodriguez, that matchup, that's the type of matchup that you're going to see a lot, possibly in like a big World Series game in a few years. I'm not putting the Pirates there yet. You know I'm putting us in there this year. But let's say in 3-4 years, Orioles, Pirates, and that matchup of GrayRod Jones, great game one, is certainly possible. Now, Paul Skeens might eventually have something to say about that because odds are he'll be the one getting the ball in game one. But hey, maybe the Orioles sign Corbin Burns to an extension and GrayRod's stuck in that two-hole being an ace in the two-hole, just like maybe Jones is for these Pirates, okay? So 2-1 after that O'Neal Cruz home run in the fifth. Luckily, in the seventh inning, the Orioles had themselves a nice inning, okay? Adley Rutschman, RBI single through the left side, scoring Ramon Urias, who actually got a hit, gang, and we'll touch on that, but actually got a hit, making it 3-1 Orioles. Santander then comes up, I believe, right after Adley with an RBI double. Liner past the third baseman, sorted down the line. Pretty hard hit ball by Santander, scoring Gunnar Henderson 4-1. Adley's not able to score on it by any means, but still, 4-1 Orioles at that point. The Pirates end up hitting a home run as well, a solo shot, in the bottom of the seventh, making it 4-2. Triolo went Yahtzee, the second home run that Grayson Rodriguez gave up that day. Again, the first one to O'Neal Cruz. And we have a lot more on GrayRod coming, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it this second. The Orioles then, in the top of the eighth, though, got it right back with a Cedric Mullins solo shot. Kind of just scraped over the wall in right field. They have a similar setup as far as maybe a shorter porch, but very high wall in right field, just like Camden Yards. And he was able to scrape it right over the wall and get that home run. Overall, the Orioles had 4 guys with multi-hit days. Gunnar, Adley, and Santander each went 2 for 5. Gunnar and Adley didn't have any extra base hits. Santander did have a double. All 3, though, did have an RBI as well. Ryan O'Hearn, as we know, hit the home run, but went 2 for 4 with that home run and also a triple, which was pretty cool to see. Certainly, Ryan O'Hearn's not a guy known for his speed, but he's an athlete out there. And, you know, you hit the right bank, you get it right bounce, and before you know it, you're on your way to third. So, love seeing that from the Orioles. Again, during that Royals series, it looked like the bats kind of got a little stymied at times. Even though we were able to pull away with the 2 out of 3, The offense didn't look great. Again, they weren't playing their best baseball. A lot of guys struggled, not just at the plate to get a hit, but certainly even multi-hit games. I know Adley had a multi-hit game in there, but I can't remember many other guys having multi-hit games. Cowser had a multi-hit game as well in that last game of the series in the Royals one. But again, it's nice to see 4 different guys, all big players in the lineup, come away with multi-hit games. All right. Overall, like I said, 5 of the 7 runs in the game were hit on solo home runs. So kind of funny and truly shows you that the game could have really gone either way, right? If the Orioles had some base runners on for some of those home runs, game would have gotten out of hand. But also, had the Pirates had a man or two on, this is a tie game or even Pirates lead. So game really could have gone either way. Again, you had 2 young studs on the bump for both teams. Digging into our guy, though, Grayson Rodriguez. He went 6 1/3, 6 hits, 2 walks. So 8 runners, not the best showing, but certainly not horrible numbers. I mean, 2 walks isn't terrible. Again, weather included. I know one of those walks was during really tough weather situations when the snow, when the sleet, and the hail was very tough. So I'm not going to peg him on that. 6 hits, maybe a little more than I'd like after 6 1/3, but not, again, anything to worry about. 1 hit an inning, essentially, even technically less. And ultimately, all he gives up are the 2 earned runs on the 2 solo shots he gave up. Keeping base runners on. We talked about this in spring training a lot when it came to Corbin Burns, came to Grayson Rodriguez, when it came to all these pitchers. One of the ways that you take that next step to being elite is when you give up home runs, they're solo home runs, right? When you have a 1, 2, even 3 guys on, when you're giving up your home runs, that's when things get ugly. That's when things snowball, and that's what the elite pitchers stay out of. They understand when there are guys on, I'm not necessarily looking to pad my stats with strikeouts or this or that. I just need to get outs when guys are on base. When nobody's on base, you're open to maybe making a worse pitch or trying to, let's say, live on the fastball a little too much or something along those lines. And the O'Neill Cruz home run, if I remember, out of the 2 of them, well, I can't remember which one it was. One of them was truly left right down the middle. I want to say it was the Triolo, if I remember correctly. O'Neill Cruz, the other one, and I think it was O'Neill Cruz's home run, was in on him, and he was just able to get around on it and put a nice swing on it. Maybe I have them backwards, and O'Neill Cruz was the one right down the middle. Either way, the point is elite pitchers find a way, one way or the other, to allow most of their home runs to happen with nobody on. And that not only is great for those pitchers taking that next step into becoming elite, but it's also great for the team to actually find a way to win ball games, right? That's the way that it happens. That's how you consistently win ball games in the majors, is when you give up your home runs, they're only solo shots. Now, I mean, you can look at the flip side, and we only hit solo shots, and you could be like, well, the Pirates lost, and well, sure, but they also gave up more base hits when we had runners on, okay? So, again, Grayson Rodriguez has a lot more major league seasoning at this point than their pitcher did. Jared Jones, I think Jared, if I remember correctly. Definitely a J Jones. Neither here or there. Yesterday, I think I called him James Jones, Jim Jones, whatever it may have been. John Jones, I think I called him again. I know it's a J, and I think it's Jared. Neither here or there. That's for the Pirates people. GrayRod has great stuff. He had 7 Ks also yesterday, showing that the strikeout stuff is absolutely there. In fact, when we dig more into his numbers, it's truly special stuff, okay? I'm actually going to save this for the GrayRod Elite Talk, so I'm not going to dig too much into it. But after 2 starts, he has a 2.19 ERA, showing that he is officially elite, in my eyes. Again, 2 starts in, but if you go back to All-Star break last year, There aren't many starting pitchers in the league, including these 2 starts and that whole stretch of season, that have been better than Grayson Rodriguez. And it shows. It does. By a lot of metrics, he is in the top 5 to top 10 of damn near every positive starting pitcher metric over that span. When you look at the rest of the pitching staff yesterday, it's nothing but good things. Danny Coulombe came in for 2/3 of an inning to clean up that 7th and struck out a guy, no hits, no walks. Yennier Cano came in for the 8th, pitched the full 8th, 2 Ks, no hits, no walks. Craig Kimbrell pitched the whole 9th, finally getting his first successful save as the Orioles closer. And this one was no problem. No hits, no walks, 2 Ks. I mean, can you hear the trend? Can you see the trend? Both Coulombe and Cano have yet to give up an earned run this season. Heck, I don't even think they've given up a run this season, even if it wasn't earned. Meanwhile, we know Kimbrell gave up the 1 run, but while it was earned, I mean, I don't want to say it's not his fault because the bloop single part wasn't his fault. Letting the man steal 2nd and 3rd was a liability. And we talked about how that's something we have to pay attention to. That's something we have to watch moving forward in this season. But yesterday, no base runners, so no problems. And the bullpen pitched fantastic, matching as fantastic as Grayson Rodriguez's pitch. Now, the last thing I'll touch on about yesterday's game is something I did mention earlier, which is Ramon Urias finally got a hit this season, gang. Thank goodness. Fortunately, he was 1 for 4, so not even that great of a day at the plate. His batting average is still .059. Certainly not something to write home about. And we talked about how the writing is on the wall for Ramon Urias at this point, even this early in the season. A guy that the Orioles probably thought had a very good chance of being on the roster the entire year. Truly, if I think coming into the year, after spring training, you asked Mike Elias or Brandon Hyde or any of these guys, and they were 1,000% honest with you, I think they would have predicted Ramon Urias is on this team the entire way through. Now I think they would say quite the opposite. Now I think that they fully believe he will be gone maybe by the end of the month. And listen, that has a lot to do with him. This is on Ramon. I'm not calling for his job. But if he continues with this sort of play, you can't help but kind of call for the man's job, right? And he's still a major league caliber baseball player. I fully believe that. And I think there are teams out there willing to give him a chance at the major league level. So ultimately, I believe he will still have a major league baseball job, which is what I want from him. I like him personally. I think he's a good player. I think he's good for the clubhouse. I think he's a nice person. But ultimately, when you have the minor league guys that we have banging down the door, you can't be batting .059 on this type of team. We're not the Oakland A's, gang. We're not even like the Kansas City Royals or somebody. Detroit Tigers. We've already ascended. We're now that elite baseball team at the very top of the mountain, trying to put the flag in at the top, but we are right there, gang. Even though it's early in the season, this is where we are living, where the air is clear, okay? And we need guys that can contribute on a consistent basis. And if Ramon's time is ticking, again, that's on him. He's not utilizing his opportunities at the plate especially. And also, I don't know how he performed defensively yesterday. I was able to watch the game, but not in the sense of every single pitch, listening to the announcers or anything like that. It was one of these things where I'm not sure if he had any good or bad moments yesterday. But before yesterday, defensively even, he was being a little shaky. It all comes down, though, to his at-bats. And he needs to put in some good days at the plate. Listen, if you keep giving me 1 for 4s, that can keep you on the roster. I can wipe away the first 2 series as being miserable for you and look at you as a 250 hitter if you're giving me 1 for 4 every day. 1 for 3 and a walk some days. Like, I'll happily take that from Ramon Urias. And I think the Orioles would happily and probably want to look past those first two series this year for Ramon when judging him. But if these tough series continue to add up and these missed opportunities at the plate continue to add up and that batting average continues to stay right around where it is currently, which is finally off of 0, I mean, there's only so long you can give a guy. There's only so big of a leash you can give a guy. So that's all I'm saying. Ramon, it is on you, buddy. I want you to succeed. I want you to be a part of this team. I think he can be a nice factor for him. And it was nice to see him be on base, frankly. I know he's gotten a walk or two this season, but nice to see him get a hit. Finally. Hopefully more to come. Hopefully. Otherwise, he might not be around for us much longer, and he can go struggle or hit or whatever he wants to do with somebody else, man. And I think there's multiple teams that would want themselves Ramon Urias. And I want Ramon Urias. I just want a Ramon Urias who actually can hit. And again, I don't need you to be Gunnar Henderson. I don't need you to be Anthony Santander. I don't need you to be Adley Rutschman. I need you to be Ramon Urias. Again, bat 250, 260, great defense, some clutch moments. That'll keep you on this roster. But you gotta perform when the opportunities present themselves, kid. All right. So now this is one of the bigger topics, and this is something I was saying towards the back half of last year, right? Especially like going into the playoff game. I remember telling a lot of people this, and while that day didn't go his way, I've been talking since, let's say, August of last year about how Grayson Rodriguez is elite and has truly established himself as an elite major league starter. And maybe I was slightly ahead of myself, although his play, I can't, other than that one playoff game, I can't pinpoint one situation where he wasn't since, like I said, last All-Star break, really. But now, 2 starts in, I want to believe that Grayson Rodriguez has established himself as an absolutely elite pitcher at the major league level. And if you look at some of his numbers, they show that. He now, like I said, he has a 2.19 ERA after his 2 starts, right? He's only the 3rd Orioles pitcher ever. The 3rd. The 3rd. And there have been a lot of good Orioles starters. He's only the 3rd one that after the first 2 starts of a season has an ERA of 2.19 or less, 16 plus Ks in 12 1/3 plus innings. Like, they're not the most outrageous stats, but again, the fact that it's the first of only 3, or one of only 3 Orioles starters ever to pull that off, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I meant to write down the names. I want to say Mike Quellers was one, and then the other one was later, or earlier, and farther away, and I forgot to write down the names, gang. So that's on me. You can go look it up. But I promise you, that's a real stat. And overall, just watching him, his arsenal, obviously his velocity stands out. But the idea that he has an elite changeup, but he doesn't need to rely on that elite changeup if it's not working. And yesterday showed that, because the changeup that had gotten a ton of whiffs in that first game, I believe like a dozen or so whiffs on the changeup, didn't, I think, produce any whiffs yesterday. But he was able to go to his breaking stuff and get whiffs through that. Okay? So that's what the best pitchers in baseball do. You understand what's working and what's not, and you have enough of an arsenal and enough experience and enough trust with all of it that you can rely and lean on what's working. Simple, gang. And Grayson Rodriguez has at least 3, if not 4 pitches that are elite. And maybe statistically and analytically, and stat-casted too early, maybe. I didn't dig into the numbers like that, but when you're actually watching the game, when you have to put yourself in the hitter's mind, he's got at least 4 that are absolutely elite and potentially 5. The kid's got an absolute arsenal, and like Gunnar Henderson said, he was shoving yesterday. I love that expression. I love that baseball expression. Shoving. He was shoving. And he was, man. He was. And it feels good. Feels great to have this top 2 at this rotation in Burns and GrayRod. And it truly might be the best 2 starters duo in baseball. When it's all said and done, that duo might be the best in baseball. And we're only like a month or so out from most likely adding Kyle Bradish back. Last year's 3rd in Cy Young, I believe. I mean, gang, you could have essentially 3 aces in this Orioles rotation this year. And who's to say one of these other guys don't step up? Because all of them, the other 3, have all shown promise to being successful enough to at least be that average back half of the rotation starter in the majors. If not, potentially even better. Again, some of these conditions have been very tough to pitch in. Wait till the weather starts getting a little warmer, gang. Wait till May hits. Wait till June and July hits. I really believe that some of these guys are going to take even another step. And we're going to look back at those starts and go, those were the bad starts. Those like solidly average starts, those were the bad ones for the Tyler Wells, for the Cole Irvins, for the Dean Kramers. And then again, you have the elite workhorses, aces at the top of this rotation in Burns and GrayRod, if nothing more. Gang! And this is everything, man. We've made it. We've made it, gang, because it's hard to not overlook things like the Orioles rotation when you look at the entire team and all of the talent in there, and then you look at all of the player depth. I'm telling you, every time I bring up these Orioles to people, which is a lot every day, all I usually hear is, you guys still need pitching. I don't know about your pitching. That's always the iffy part to people. I don't know about your pitching. Let them start saying that in the middle of the summer, and they're going to sound out of their minds. Just like right now, people think I sound out of my mind for talking up this rotation, even without Means and Bradish. A lot of good things are coming, gang, and it feels good to have truly 2 elite top of the rotation arms in baseball. Now, again, I mentioned this on the gambling episode when I was talking potential GrayRod for Cy Young, which still has a long way to go. I still like Corbin Burns more. And the main reason for that, frankly, is I feel as though Grayson Rodriguez is going to, at some point, hit a stumble. A small stumble, not like last year's tremendous fall, but just a small stumble. And I feel like he's going to be able to rework things and work through all those troubles in the majors while still being successful. Again, maybe mirroring starts like Kramer and Irvin and Wells had in their first starts. And again, you're going to look back and say those were the bad ones. Those average starts were the bad ones he had. Now, if that lasts for a month and a half, which I think it could, I think that takes him out of the Cy Young conversation. At least when the top comes to play. Maybe you get yourself in the top 5, even top 3 of voting. But when it comes to those 1 votes, I don't know if that gets you there. But hell, maybe I'm just being a little pessimistic about it. There's a real chance Grayson Rodriguez dominates this entire season through. And Burns and GrayRod are co-front runners for the Cy Young. And it's the question of which one's going to win, not if either of them will win. Certainly possible. Certainly possible. So, when we mention a guy like Ramon Urias, right? and how his clock is ticking. Again, I think the Orioles are going to give him the benefit of the doubt and also a fair shake at it. They're not going to overreact and kick him to the curb quick. But it's hard not to believe that the way that these Norfolk kids are playing isn't making that leash a lot shorter, okay? And again, I wasn't planning, still am not planning on having a Norfolk Tide or minor league segment of the day. Like, it sounds cool if I was on for 3 hours every day with you, gang. Sure. If I was on Masson for 2-3 hours, Pat McAfee style, sure. We could have minor league highlights of the day. I wasn't planning on having a minor league segment every day. But the way these guys have played, how can I not talk about them? And not just how they're playing, but the type of prospects they are. And truly that some should already be major leaguers consistently, like Kyle Stowers. But then you have a lot knocking on the door of trying to become that established major league player as well. And they are all doing their part to make it hard on the Orioles to find a way to get them on this team, hopefully. Because, gang, we talked about the 27-run game or whatever it was the other day. So, I was recording on Friday, so you would have thought that I would have talked about Thursday's Norfolk Tide game. I'm not planning on talking Norfolk Tide every day, but if they play like this, I have to, right? So I didn't even look into Thursday's game when I was talking Friday about their Tuesday-Wednesday game. But on Thursday, Heston hit another home run, his 5th in 3 games. He also leads, after that day at least, but I believe still probably, he leads the minors in RBI, slugging, and OPS. Heston Kjerstad is on another level as far as his heater right now. And shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is a former top pick, number 2 overall in the draft. Obviously had the myocardosis problem, was out a year or two, came back last year, tore his way through the minors, got himself to the Orioles by the end of the season, and stayed on the playoff roster despite the fact that he didn't get any appearances during the playoffs. But this is a guy that has all the makings to somebody who should be on this team right now. Again, we just don't have a spot for him. But like I said, leading the minors in RBI, slugging, OPS after another home run. Also, Kobe Mayo hit one. Gang, I'm not exaggerating. I saw the numbers. This was hit over the left field scoreboard. By the way, it was a game-winning home run for Kobe Mayo. So it was in the clutch as well. He hit this one. I mean, I saw some metrics talking about 600 feet, like 600 plus feet. Again, I don't think they had StatCast there. That may have been an exaggeration, but this ball disappeared into the night, gang. It went over the tall scoreboard and left and dis-freaking-peered. So the idea that Kobe Mayo hit one 600 feet, who am I to say it didn't go 600, man? What, 550? Whatever it was a monster major league caliber home run. And if I remember too on the pitch, it wasn't some easy pitch to get to. I want to say it was a little high and a little inside, and he just turned on that thing and walloped it. Kobe Mayo, again, it was a game-winning home run, and they continue to mash. So then on Friday, yesterday, they put up 10 in the first inning. Both Heston and Stowers homered again. Unbelievable. And they won it, actually, crazily enough, in the 10th inning with a score of 11-10. So remember, they scored 10 in that first inning. They didn't score again till the 10th inning when they got their 11th run that wound up being the game winner. So, just awesome stuff that we're seeing from these Norfolk Tide, man. And I haven't even paid attention to AA, single A, rookie ball, none of this stuff, man. So, like, the idea that they have this type of talent spread throughout might not be as insane as Norfolk is. But gang, truly, if I were to tell people that they could either have the Oakland Athletics roster or the Norfolk Tides roster, I feel like most people would take Norfolk Tide. And honestly, Norfolk probably would win more games in the majors than a team like Oakland might win this season. Truly. Even though Oakland's up 3-0 right now on Detroit, it doesn't matter about the point. All I'm saying is, I understand they're all major league players. People love to talk this in like pro to college football, NFL to college football. Oh, can the best college football team beat the worst NFL team? And no, that just simply isn't happening. But in the game of baseball, I mean, the Norfolk Tide have at least minimum 5 studs that could very well should be on a major league roster currently and are just blocked. They have at least another 5 studs that are very, very close to being ready for the majors. And then I'd say they have at least another 5 studs who are amazing prospects who maybe need the whole year in the minors to really make that next step. But trust me, if you watched Oakland Athletics baseball consistently, you would see a lot of the same things that a prospect who's maybe a year too early for the majors, but a great prospect, would show in the majors. You'd see some flashes of promise, and then you'd see some tough innings. All I'm saying is, if the Norfolk Tide took the place of the Oakland Athletics, I believe they might win more games this season. That's how talented of a team we have in Norfolk right now. And that's when I say things like, Ramon Urias, the clock is ticking and the leash is getting shorter. It's because a guy like Connor Norby, a guy like Jackson Holliday, a guy like Heston Kjerstad, a guy like Kyle Stowers, like all these guys, Kobe Mayo, all these guys are either ready for Major League Baseball or so dang close to Major League Baseball. The talent's there, gang. Not only do I think we have maybe the best team in baseball right now, but when we get these backups, reinforcements I should call them, not backups. When we get the reinforcements of this youth energized into this team that we have built, there's no stopping us, gang. Truly. This is why I'm still screaming the Orioles are a 100-plus win team again. And ultimately are one of the best bets every single day, right? And no longer, and I'm going to get a little gambling on you real quick, but like last season, they were very undervalued. They didn't have Corbin Burns, Bradish, GrayRod, all these guys were undervalued. They hadn't yet shown how great they could be. And the Orioles were just a team nobody really believed in outside of me. And some of Birdland as well, and I think a lot of Birdland saw it coming. Maybe not to that extent, 101 wins, but I did. I was saying they were one of the best teams in baseball February of last year. So, all I'm saying is, the Orioles aren't undervalued anymore. Like, for instance, this time last year, the Orioles would be underdogs in this series in Pittsburgh. They would have potentially even been underdogs 1 or 2 nights against the Royals last series. If anything, though, it would be very close to even money. Small favorites, minus 110, so 110 wins you 100. But now they're like minus 150, minus 180, minus 170. So the value is no longer there. The only way betting the Orioles every single day, like I have been doing, truly can make you money in the long run this season is if they're essentially that 100-win team. I didn't do the math, but I want to say odds are it's probably somewhere in that 96, 97 range is that breaking point to where you'd be consistently making money and the losses wouldn't have hurt that bankroll that would be building up. But certainly, if you can get to that 100-something wins, and still for a team that I think is very, very likely to get there, and extremely likely at least to get to that mid-90s range, I truly believe the Orioles are still undervalued, and that's why I'm betting them every single game and have been this entire season. and most likely will continue. Now, again, I've talked about how honest and realist I am when it comes to especially betting the Orioles. I'm not just going to bet the Orioles because I love the Orioles. What I want to do is bet the Orioles when I feel like there's still value left and that they're going to be very good. And I still believe that's the case. If at some point this season, I believe, heck, maybe it's not going to continue paying out. Like, maybe the Orioles have such a extension over 500 at some point. I say, you know what? How many more games can they really wind up over 500 from this point? In which case, there's going to be a lot more losses than wins as far as gambling goes. So we'll see. That will all come in time. I'm sure I won't be able to shut my mouth about it if that time comes. In some regards, I hope it does come because that means that the Orioles overperformed. I can't see them underperforming and stopping because of that. I think that they're only going to overperform, in which case, then at that point, they're now even less valuable. Vegas and public see even more value, or like think the Orioles are even better than they did before. So there's less value on it. The lines are more heavy. And also, the Orioles don't have to have an insane record in order to still wind up with an insane record in the end, right? They can have a decent record moving forward if you build up such a big lead that you can still get to a great record even if you don't dominate the rest of the way, right? All right. So one of the guys that we know is knocking on the door, and really the guy that's in line to take Tony Kemp's job whenever the Orioles deem he's ready, which it seems like he was ready coming out of spring training. But hey, again, you want to try and manufacture that extra year. So hopefully that does the trick, right? Hopefully that's all they're looking at. But Jackson Holliday, according to Buck Britton, came out, the AAA manager, and Jackson Holliday apparently is, quote, playing with a little chip on his shoulder. And I love hearing this, and you can kind of see that. And I think that was a great thing. We've talked about the Orioles manufacturing, what's the word I'm looking for? Manufacturing struggle, if you will. Or that's not the right word, but essentially making it so that these guys aren't just handed this. And so like somebody we talked like Heston, right? Heston worked his way back from myocardosis. So he's gone through a lot of that struggle. He's gone through a lot of that failure, but it wasn't on field by any means, right? Then he had a lot of success early last year, got to the majors, had some success also, like we said, made the playoff roster. But, it seemed like it would be beneficial to him to go back to the minors to kind of not be handed everything, right? I'm not coming up with the exact word that I have, but I talked about it heavily in spring training. So it's kind of annoying that I can't think of the one word right now. But let's just call it the struggle, right? Some struggle is good, right? It's like friction. In order to make a fire, you need some friction. So you need to manufacture some friction sometimes for players that are this good, prospects that are this good, that have performed very well, and probably deserve a spot on the team. Now, Heston didn't have the best spring, wasn't the worst, wasn't the best, so it was easy to put him in the minors. But a guy like Jackson Holliday did have a fantastic spring. Outside of that strikeout to walk ratio, everything else was up and up, right? I haven't looked at his strikeout to walk ratio this year, so I don't know where it's standing so far this season. But the way he's playing, there's no way the Orioles can continue to keep him off this roster, especially if Tony Kemp and Ramon Urias are not really performing as those role players, as those utility role players. Mateo relatively is. Mateo's performing exactly how I need Mateo to perform at the moment. But the other two aren't. And we know they wanted a lefty hitting second baseman, and Jackson Holliday is going to be that for them when he comes up, which I think will be soon. Heck, it might be a week from today, week from a couple days. I really think that we might be in single-digit days as far as the amount of time we need to wait for Jackson Holliday and potentially another name or two like Connor Norby to make their way back to the majors. Now, I wanted to touch real quick on how excited I am to watch Tyler Wells in his second start today in Game 2 in Pittsburgh. I'm really hoping that he's able to continue his dominance from last start. Now, he did have a shaky start, but he ended up leaving the game after retiring 14 straight batters to end his day in that last start. So while, again, he started off a little shaky in tough weather, he was able to remain calm, stay focused, make his pitches, and get a lot of outs before he was taken out of the game. And I'm hoping he's able to come right into this start and really continue that. We know that he typically has fantastic whip numbers, so really barely walks guys, and usually doesn't give up many hits either. Hopefully that remains the same. And frankly, if you look at the past history with the Pirates lineup against Tyler Wells, it's not overwhelming by any means. In fact, I think only 4 players have that experience against Tyler Wells. But it's their 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters that have that experience, none of which have a hit, all of which I believe have multiple at-bats. Now, I don't think there's anyone with more than like 4 or 5 at-bats against Tyler Wells, but neither here or there. They're all over, and that's the heart of this Pirates lineup today. So, some potential very good stuff for the Orioles coming. Hopefully, we can take the series right here, right now, in Game 2, and potentially give ourselves a chance for a sweep tomorrow. We'll see about that. I'm just very excited. You know how much I love and have an affinity for Tyler Wells. And I believe Tyler Wells truly could be one of the most underrated X factors in this team and a surprise guy to get himself in the Cy Young talk if he's able to hold on to one of these rotation spots once Means and Bradish come back. And personally, he won the number 3 spot out of camp. So, projecting, the Orioles have already made the statement coming out of camp that Tyler Wells, they're projecting, is going to be the guy to remain in this rotation as far as those bottom 3 go when Bradish and Means come back. 2 of Irvin, Kramer, and Wells have to dissipate from the rotation, assuming Bradish and Means are both healthy and ready to start games consistently. I mean, like I said, when you make Tyler Wells the number 3 starter in the season, you are sending the message, he's the man that has the upper hand to stay in this rotation moving forward in a month or 2. So we'll see what happens. Either way, I love Tyler Wells. I'm very excited to see his start today. I'm very optimistic about it, again, because of the small but some sample size against some of these prime Pirates hitters. Don't be surprised if Tyler Wells has himself quite a day today in Pittsburgh. Maybe doesn't strike out more than like 4. I could see that. I could see Tyler Wells really relying on the ground ball, fly ball, just getting outs, not necessarily even strikeouts. But we'll see. And as far as offensively, the Orioles are facing a guy with a 14 ERA right now. Again, only after 1 start, but still promising. This was the game when I came into this series yesterday talking about it. This Game 2 was the one that I said I was most confident in the Orioles winning. Not just because they were facing a guy with a 14 ERA, but also because Tyler Wells and how he pitched that first game and what he showed me in that first game. And again, even though he got in some trouble, he still did not allow many hits or walks. In fact, I don't know if he gave up any walks in that first game. So, very exciting stuff, very good stuff. Very excited about Tyler Wells. Now, I mentioned that the Orioles made a trade, and it's extremely minor. I mean, heck, most of you might not even know the name, but Diego Castillo got traded to the Twins for some cash. Cash considerations is one of my favorite phrases. It's like, yeah, maybe we'll pay you. And I know it's like not that. It's probably like, oh, we'll either pay you this much or this much, depending on X, Y, or Z. But I just love the idea that they're like, can we have that guy? Yeah, what do you want to give me for him? I might give you some cash, maybe. When are you gonna give it to me now? No. I'll consider giving you some cash later. Consider it. I'll just consider it. But either way, Diego Castillo, who we actually claimed from the Phillies in mid-February, a few days after my birthday. Listen, we trade him away. We brought him in because I don't think the Orioles anticipated just how great these prospects were going to hit the ground running. And they wanted some depth, and they wanted to make sure that they had they had a guy or two that they could bring up if, God forbid, there was an injury and they didn't want to move a prospect up early. Diego Castillo was that guy. But trading him now really shows me two things. Again, it was such a minor trade that most people probably don't see anything of it. But I see a couple things being said with that move. One, I think that there's a full trust now in the prospects that they have in the system, as far as if somebody goes down in the majors before we're planning on bringing you up, we're still confident in you coming up to help us. I also think another one was simply just the idea that they were able to keep maybe one or two guys they had to designate for assignment that they weren't planning. A Nick Mattoon, even a Ryan McKenna. The idea of still having those guys in the minors basically makes it easier, whether they play the same positions or not, just to be able to arrange things. God forbid there was an injury before they were planning on moving a prospect up and wanted a fill-in, let's call it, before that prospect they were ready to move up. But I really believe that the number one thing it's signaling, and the big flag I'm seeing, is just what I've talked about the past day or two. That, Ramon, clock is ticking, man. And Tony, clock is ticking. Between Kemp and Urias, we have Holliday. I mean, you can throw Mayo in there, but really Norby is the name that I've been preaching will come up together. And I think that, again, we might be about a week away, give or take, from those two coming up together to Baltimore. In which case, I mean, okay, a part of me could go, well, then why wouldn't we keep Diego for, some depth? But because of the team that we have with veterans and guys that are going to be playing every single day, there's not that need necessarily to bring in a young guy for rotation. You can give those minor league spots to some of the other guys, some of the Mac Horvath or Max Wagner, maybe move them up a little. Any one of these guys, right? I think Errol also plays infield. And just the fact that we don't need kind of this Diego Castillo right now in the depth. We can get another one of them if we need them. I think that they're ready to promote those top two infielders in Norby and Holliday to the majors soon, opening up those spots for some of their other prize prospects to get more reps. And they don't want a guy like Diego Castillo taking those reps. Now, certainly, there could be other factors, okay? There could be other reasons why the move happened. But when I saw it just happen today, I was like, this to me isn't just some random thing. This to me is them sitting down and going, okay, even if, God forbid, we got an injury or two today and we had to move up some of these guys early, we have the guys to do it. We have the flexibility to where we could even move up, let's say, Stowers or Heston instead of a Norby Holliday early and play them more in a corner outfield or first base position and allow some other guys like Mateo to fill in the gap where it need be. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm not hoping for an injury from this team. The health of these guys is the number one thing that's important to their success. Because if you start getting cluster injuries, that's when things start steamrolling downwards, and it's hard to bring that back to a great season through all those injuries. Not impossible, but it is. But it's tough, right? So the last thing I want to talk about, and I teased this earlier about how I was hoping we were going to have time, and I think we got a little bit of time to touch on it, is one of my favorite topics, which is the path to the Orioles trading for Mike Trout. And truly, I believe the Orioles trading for Mike Trout not only is possible, but makes so much stupid sense, I can't get it out of my mind, truthfully. And I've loved to see how Trout has come out and performed so far this season. Now, he doesn't have the highest batting average. I think he's around 240, give or take, but he does have 3 home runs, and he has shown the ability to be that star and that big difference maker again, okay? I know he's battled injuries in the past couple years, hasn't looked as good, but I was projecting that Trout was going to come back to at least near elite status. Like maybe not all-time elite, but just normal elite, which is funny to say, but like, you know, he was such an all-time elite with his stats that I don't need him to get back to that point. If he's just playing normal elite baseball, that's good enough for me. And I think he's showing that he is. And he's playing for a very poor, very crappy Angels team. Now, I think they're still sitting a game above 500 at the moment, but I can't help but think, not looking at their schedule, but I can't help but think that in the next couple weeks to a month that it's going to that's going to lead to them falling lower in the standings and kind of falling out of it because they don't have that great of a team. Now, Trout obviously needs to continue his excellence, and I believe he will. I really think he's going to have a great year. And when you look at the Orioles as a whole, right, let's assume by the time that this is becoming a reality, we've brought up Jackson Holliday for Tony Kemp. We've probably even brought up Connor Norby for Ramon Urias. Or at the very least, Urias has come back to being a consistently solid utility player for this team. So that's the core that you have. Let's assume that the outfield is playing pretty well, okay? While Hayes has got off to a very rocky start. I think he's only batting 100. Mullins, while he has a couple home runs, isn't batting much higher, probably around 140. Santander's been the best of all of them, couple home runs as well. Still, though, batting in the mid-200s. I want to believe, and again, I'm not calling for anyone's job. Personally, I love all of these guys, so I don't necessarily want to see any of them go. However, I do believe that Austin Hayes, his name makes the most sense in this scenario, okay? So stick with me. Let's just play some hypotheticals. Let's say Austin Hayes gets back to having a good season, but he's not having an all-star season like he was at the first half of last year. He's just having a solid year, right? So if you package Hayes, that gives them a proven major league starting outfielder, a guy who still, I believe, has a year left of arbitration after this one, and you can sign to an extension at a reasonable price. I think that's very attractive for an Angels team rebuilding. You mix that in, let's say, with Kyle Stowers, who just might never really have the spot for him on this team. Between all of these outfielders that we have and the idea that we'd still in this scenario have Mullins for this year and next year and Santander for at least this year. We have Kowser. We have Heston. Like, there's a lot of these guys that truly there aren't many spots. And Stowers has played so well in the minors that I believe he's reigniting his stock. There was some belief that Stowers had lost some of his juice in his stock because he continues to get stuck in the minors because the Orioles just don't really have a position to give him right now. I think the way he's performing, and a part of that is, yes, he has to continue performing, but that's why I think this is definitely possible in the next month or two, let's say, because you don't want to wait till later in the season at the trade deadline, and then maybe the flame on Stowers is kind of less ignite again, or not as ignited again, okay? It's kind of starting to dampen again because he's not hitting out of his damn mind. If you sell high right now, not today, but soon, is a good time to sell the Kyle Stowers stock, in the Orioles' opinion, because I think a lot of teams would look at what he did this spring, look at what he's doing in the minors, and go, the Angels would go, oh my God, this kid, you know, he might have graduated from being a, quote, prospect already, but he's got serious potential, and this is somebody we can build around. Frankly, Kyle Stowers looks like a guy that should be playing for the Angels. I don't know, he has the look of an Oriole right now, too, because between Stowers, Heston, Holliday, Gunnar, Adley, Jackson, they all have a very similar look. But, I don't know, his blonde hair, it would just make sense in Cali to me. So let's start the hypothetical trade with Hayes, Stowers, add Seth Johnson, who's a very nice starting pitching prospect for us. Not a homegrown guy, I believe. Somebody we brought in, I want to say, on the Trey Mancini trade with the Astros. Okay, so there is the chance Mike Elias looks at Seth Johnson as a homegrown guy to him personally, not necessarily a franchise, but him, because, again, I think he came from the Astros, where Mike Elias was. But he's right now between Povich and McDermott, the third pitching prospect. If we see how Grayson is pitching, there's a lot of reasons why you're like, okay, we can afford to give up our third best pitching prospect, really fourth, if you include GrayRod as the top guy. So Hayes, Stowers, Seth Johnson, and then one of either the two names I mentioned just a second ago, Mac Horvath or Max Wagner, okay? And to me, that just is giving them a mid to upper level infield prospect, because that we would give them a absolutely major league left fielder or outfielder in Austin Hayes, an absolute major league ready prospect outfielder in Kyle Stowers, a stud pitching prospect and very close to the majors in Seth Johnson, maybe just back half of this year, maybe even next year, and then a pretty good, maybe improving if they have good years, whichever one is having the best year, infield prospect for you that could be up in a year or two, or even sooner if you want to kind of expedite it like the Angels have done for some of their prospects like Nito or Shanuel. So that's kind of like the hypothetical I have, and I think the Angels, if they start falling out of the standings and dropping down, and Mike Trout continues having a very good year, hell, even MVP caliber year, I think that's unbelievably attractive and something that doesn't really hurt the Orioles all that much moving forward. And as far as solidifying the team that they have, really would do the best job as adding in that star veteran player to really make this run. And I broke down the contract previously. I'm not going to do that now. But the contract kind of runs in a perfect amount of time for Mike Trout to where as soon as we have to pay all of this core, and especially a guy like Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, both having Scott Boras as their agent, it probably will be at the end of their arbitration years. Maybe some of these guys you can get done early. But ultimately, that Mike Trout contract would run its course, I believe, in 7 years. Or this is the 7th year left, which sounds like a long time. But again, when you have control for the next 5 to 8 years of this whole core, kind of falls right in line to the idea, well, hey, we can give these guys these contracts because Mike Trout's 30-something million is dropping off soon. And who knows, maybe the Angels want a better prospect or two and they decide they want to eat like 15 million of that. And we can just upgrade one or two of those prospects and then out of nowhere have Mike Trout on an unbelievably reasonable deal moving forward. So that's just my hypothetical. That's just my pipe dream that I'm going to keep alive, and a narrative that might not be in Baltimore yet, but I'm planning on having the narrative become a thing in Baltimore moving forward as this season progresses. Again, assuming Mike Trout stays healthy, assuming the Orioles offense and just team in general, I think, needs it. We'll see what happens. But, I mean, heck, how could you not be excited as an Orioles fan if I'm telling you can get Mike Trout for those 4 guys? You might feel bad that Austin Hayes is gone or Kyle Stowers is gone or you won't see Seth Johnson or Horvath or Wagner as an Oriole. But to see Mike Trout as an Oriole, and every Oriole fan I've talked to about this has loved the idea. And they see the vision. I want the front office to see the vision if they haven't already, and I'm going to continue this narrative moving forward throughout the season. So with that, gang, great episode. Game's about to start in, give or take an hour at the time I'm recording this. So hopefully we have a great game, finish off this series before the final game tomorrow, and we can go up 2-0 on the Pirates in this series. Hopefully you have a great day from Tyler Wells on the bump, and the Orioles offense continues to hit not only early, but often. So with that being said, gang, we are going to head out. This was another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. Let's go, O's.
Talking